Hey guys, it's Justine here from I Should Read That, and I am so excited to have discovered that there is something called Victober. So basically it's a big push to read Victorian novels in the month of October. It's run by 4 hosts. We have Katie from Books and Things, Kate Howe, Ange at Beyond the Pages, and Lucy at Lucy the Reader. I found out about this challenge through Lucy's channel. Essentially there are 5 challenges that go with Victober. There's an overall challenge, which is to read a book by a female author. The next challenge is to read a book that's been recommended to you. Read an underrated book, so they've decided that is 12,000 Goodreads reviews or less. Read a book by a non-English author, so the Victorian literature that we know today, that's so popular today, tends to be a lot of English authors. However, there are so many Irish authors, Scottish authors, and Welsh authors that maybe don't get as much love, so I think that that's a really, really great idea. And the last one is to read a book with a supernatural plot or theme, which is going to be really, really fun. So I have a few recommendations. I am not going to lie, I currently have a whole bunch of books lying around my feet that I'm not going to be able to use. I was a little enthusiastic when I raided my works library, and I picked up a bunch of books that I know a lot about but I have never read, so I've cut all of those out. I'm only going to tell you about books that I have read or books that I am planning to read for this month. So just a really quick disclaimer, almost all the books that you're going to see are Oxford University Press, Oxford World's Classics. That's because I work there. But this is not sponsored by OUP, this is not endorsed by OUP, this is just me grabbing what I can and using the resources that I've got available. So just want to get that clear out of the way first. So first things first, I picked 2 books by non-English authors that you guys might enjoy. The first, actually, now that I think of it, both of these are probably going to be on everyone's list of recommendations, but I'm going to add my name into there because these are both amazing books. The first is Oscar Wilde's The Picture of Dorian Gray. It's the only novel that Oscar Wilde ever wrote. He wrote lots of plays and short stories and some fairy tales, things like that, but this is his only novel. You probably know what it's all about, but I'll give you a little refresher. Young man, Dorian Gray, has a portrait painted of him. He's a beautiful young man, it's a beautiful portrait. He makes a deal with the devil, essentially, to never age, and the portrait will age instead. Obviously, that's never going to be a good idea, so shenanigans ensue. It's such a good book, I love it. I haven't read it since I was in high school, so that's been a while. So I might actually read this as a refresher. It's a short book, it's only, I think this is 188 pages, so this is going to be a really, really accessible place to start. His language is very, very accessible today. You won't have some of the trouble that you might have with some of the longer books where the authors were very clearly getting paid by the word. So this is going to be a great place to start. Next, another book that's going to be on everyone's list, you know his name, loud and proud, and that is Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's Sherlock Holmes books. I picked The Study in Scarlet because it is actually the story in which Holmes and Watson meet. After that, you can kind of read them in any order that you want to. Of course, there are the novels that go with. I think there are 4 novels. Count of the Baskervilles is one. There's just tons and tons of short stories. You can read so much of Arthur Conan Doyle's works. This is a really, really good place to start. Next, falling under supernatural, one of my favorite authors. I don't really like poetry, but I love Samuel Coleridge. He is amazing. You probably know The Rime of the Ancient Mariner, which is in this book, and it is fantastic. It is just, it's so creepy and eerie, and just the way that it's sort of clung on to our social consciousness is just so amazing. It's about a man, I think he's at a wedding, and he sees this guest who's kind of out of place. It's an ancient mariner, a sailor, and he approaches him, and the sailor tells him his story. If you've ever heard a phrase about having an albatross hung around your neck, that's where this is from. Super spooky. You get ghost ships, you get death, you get all of this good stuff, and he is just so much fun. The other one of his that I've read that's in here is Christabel, another really fun one. Highly recommend him. Again, super accessible, a great place to start. Next I have an author that I really don't like. However, it's an amazing, amazing book, and that is the vastly overrated Charles Dickens. However, Great Expectations is such an amazing book. It's such a good book, and I realize that I am saying that he's vastly overrated and I am picking his most popular possibly overrated book, but I don't care. This book is amazing. If you don't know, Great Expectations is about a young man named Pip. Young Pip lives with his sister and her husband, the blacksmith, with few prospects and advancement until a mysterious benefaction takes him from the Kent marshes to London. Oh, it's so good. It's got, like, if you love twists, it's got a great twist ending. I feel like I'm not really spoiling that for people because this book's like 200 years old, so whatever. But you should absolutely pick this book up. It's a bit longer than the other two that I've just talked about. This edition is about 440 pages. It's just so good. It's wonderful, and I love it. No matter how my feelings about Dickens may go, I really truly think that this book is well worth it, and it's such a great book to have kind of in your arsenal to have said that you've read. If you're a fan of crime fiction and mystery novels, the next book is going to be so perfect for you, and that is Wilkie Collins' The Moonstone. So The Moonstone is often called the very first English detective novel. So a lot of those tropes that you see that are so, like, you think of as being very Agatha Christie, like gathering all the suspects in the room together and sort of telling how the crime happened and then pointing at the person that you're accusing that you know is the murderer or thief or whoever. That's straight out of this book. You get the bumbling country detective, you get the beautiful young heiress, you get all of this stuff, and it's just, oh, it's so much fun. I actually read this last year. This is the most recent Victorian novel that I've read, and it's perfect for sort of October, for Halloween time. It's not a supernatural book, however, it's just so much fun, and I really enjoyed this. I'd highly recommend it. I think it's underrated. I don't know if it's actually going to count toward the underrated books, but absolutely pick this one up if you're interested. The next two, oh my god, the next two are two of my favorite books of all time. I'll probably get slightly emotional. So the first one is actually Elizabeth Gaskell's North and South. Oh, I love this book so much. Oh my god. And if you are finding that you're having some trouble getting into the Victorian novels, do yourself a huge favor and get the BBC adaptation of North and South. Oh, it's so good, you guys. I love it so much. I actually watched it before I read this book, and that's what got me to read this book. And this is my favorite book, at least one of my favorite books of all time. So think like the romance of Jane Austen and sort of the social class and the interplays between the two, and then take sort of the social awareness of Charles Dickens. So it's basically about this young woman named Margaret Hale whose father loses his faith. He's a clergyman, so this is really inconvenient. So he moves them up from the south of England to the north. It's basically Manchester. It's not called Manchester, it's Milton, but it's Manchester. And she soon begins to navigate society with the mill owners and becomes friends with some of the mill workers, which is this huge sort of differentiation in class. And oh, it's so good. And Richard Armitage as John Thornton is just like, oh, so amazing. I love this book. Watch the show, read the book. It's one of the best adaptations that I've ever seen. Oh, it's so good. It might start a little bit slow, but once the rock gets thrown, you'll just be absolutely absorbed. You'll know exactly what I'm talking about. So the last book that I have as a recommendation, oh, I'm gonna get really emotional again, is one of my favorite books of all time by one of my favorite authors of all time, and that's Dr. Thorne by Anthony Trollope. Oh, you guys, I love this book so much. So this is actually the third book in the Barchester series of novels. So he wrote a series of 6 novels, The Chronicles of Barsetshire, and this is number 3. You don't have to have read the first 2 in order to really like this and to appreciate this. It might help, but honestly, you'll be fine. It's about Mary. It's a beautiful young woman, very virtuous, very wonderful, lovely. Everyone loves her, but she is dirt poor. She's the ward of her uncle, who's Dr. Thorne, and he discovers that she is actually the heiress of a large fortune through some questionable means. Nothing to do with her. However, it's a question of whether she should sort of have her character sullied through reasons that have nothing to do with her, or if she will have this money that will allow her to marry the love of her life, who's like in a class above her, and it's just, oh, it's so wonderful. And ITV actually adapted this. You can see this is the movie tie-in cover, and I haven't seen it, but it's Julian Fellowes who did Downton Abbey, so if you like Downton Abbey, you're probably gonna love it. And oh my god, Guys, read this book. I love this book so, so much. Again, it's a little bit longer, but oh, it's so worth it. It's so worth it. So now that I have run you guys through some of the books that I recommend to you, I am going to tell you the books that I plan to read for Victober. So the first one is going to be on everyone's list, and shame on me for having never read it. I actually have only read one book by these sisters, so I'm going to read Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte. I have read Wuthering Heights. I wasn't a huge fan of it because I was expecting romance with a lowercase r rather than romance with an uppercase R. You're an English major, you'll get it. If you don't get it, watch Lucy's channel, she talks about this. Jane Eyre, everyone knows Jane Eyre. I mean, it's about this young woman, she's an orphan, she goes through this horrible, horrible boarding school, and she ends up in Thornfield Hall with Mr. Rochester. She's a governess for his children, and things ensue. I don't know why I've never read this. I think I tried back in high school where I didn't necessarily have the appreciation for such fine things. But this is high on my list. This is probably my #1 priority. I need to read this book. Like, guys, I can't believe I've never read this book. So next, nice and short, possibly cheating. Because this author is not British, technically, he is American. However, for all intents and purposes, he was British. He very much identified as British, and he became a British citizen before he died, and that is Henry James. I picked The Turn of the Screw. The Turn of the Screw is a ghost story, supernatural. We're already knocking out one of these categories, and I have been meaning to read it for so long. Again, it's another one. I can't believe I've never read this book. I've never read anything by Henry James at all. I can practically hear my mother glaring at me because I'm pretty sure he's one of her favorite authors. So The Turn of the Screw. A young, inexperienced governess is charged with the care of Miles and Flora, two small children abandoned by their uncle at his grand country house. She sees the figure of an unknown man on the tower and his face at the window. It's Peter Quint, the master's dissolute valet, and he has come for little Miles, but Peter Quint is dead. Ooh, I'm so excited. I love ghost stories. I particularly love, like, Victorian ghost stories. They knew how to do terror, right? So this is short. This one is what? It ends with Turn of the Screw. This book is 236 pages of text. There's a bunch of other short stories that go with this. I will definitely read those as well. I might skip to the end and read Turn of the Screw first and then go back, but we'll see how that goes. And last but very much not least is going to be my candidate for reading a non-English author, and that is Sir Walter Scott's Heart of Midlothian. I have never read anything by Walter Scott, which, again, shame on me. I absolutely love everything Scotland. I lived in Edinburgh for a year. It's one of my favorite places on the planet, and this book is actually a historical novel about Edinburgh. The people have been infuriated by the actions of John Porteous, captain of the guard. When his life is saved by the distant monarch, they ignore the queen and resolve to take their own revenge. So that's not the plot. That's what sort of the plot circulates around. It all has to do with the Tolbooth prison, which, if you have been to Edinburgh, live in Edinburgh, if you know where St. Giles Cathedral is, that's sort of the site of where the Tolbooth prison is. If you look at the ground, sort of right around there, you see this heart in tiles. It's the Heart of Midlothian. I've been meaning to read his stuff for ages. I've just never gotten around to it. I think that this is going to be the perfect opportunity. So that's it for my Victober recommendations and what I'm planning to read. I am so excited about this. I think that this is going to be so much fun. I'm really looking forward to this. I haven't properly read Victorian literature since I was in college. And that was 8 years ago since I graduated. So I'm really, really looking forward to this. I'm really looking forward to maybe buddy reading some of these books. So if you're planning on reading any of those three, definitely let me know. If you have some recommendations for me, or if you want some more recommendations, absolutely leave me a comment, let me know. If you're going to participate, please let me know. I'm going to link the channels of all of the hosts below, as well as my own social media. I imagine I'm going to be overly enthusiastic about this, and I'm probably going to be tweeting about it constantly, so definitely follow me. I imagine I'll probably do a follow-up video at the end of the month and see how I did. So definitely let me know what you think, and I will see you later.